Yo, it's me, Woke Ezekiel again, and we're going to be talking about what's the difference between sex and gender. Except we're not going to be talking about that, we're talking about how there is more than two genders. So essentially, you may be wondering, what's the difference between sex and gender? As you can see, there are very much differences. Sex is usually biological. Society tells us there are two sexes, male and female. You may be familiar with the fact that some people are intersex or have difference in sexual development. So as you can see, there is differences in sexual development. There is 30 different types of known intersex variants. So there is so much different types of intersex people out there that you cannot say that it's only male and female. It's simply just not that simple. So, it can also... So it says that a person... I would like to make the little argument here that a person who gives birth isn't immediately a person who... Or a lot of people argue that a woman is someone who gives birth. And I think that is very discriminative against people who can't actually give birth, eh? So as you can see, we have a whole lot of information here. We have primary sex characteristics, secondary sex characteristics. Society has traditionally taught us that there are two genders, men and women. We're told that those who are assigned male at birth are men and those who are assigned female at birth are women. But gender isn't an either-or scenario, it's a spectrum. So essentially, gender is a social construct that was used by marketing teams to sell more bathrooms. That's essentially what they're up here for. So Ezekiel's the straight white cis man is breaking it down for you Zeke style here. And like I said before, the flag doesn't define you, you define the flag, you define your own gender, man. If someone can call me King's pronouns, that would be friggin' dope. I'm just saying, I would respect that because that's king behavior, dude. So, first of all, we get a lot of arguments talking about how they, them is not singular. It means multiple people. However, the singular they has been used since at least... Hold on. Let me find exactly which one it was used. It was used, I think, originally by Shakespeare, but I'm not completely here. They with the singular accident goes back to Middle English of the 14th century, slightly younger than they with a plural antecedent, which was borrowed from Old Norse in the 13th century and has remained in use for centuries in spite of its prescription by traditional grammarians beginning in the mid-18th century. Informal spoken English exhibits universal use of the word of the singular they. An examination by person who I can't say published in 1998 found that British speakers, regardless of social status, age, sex, or region, use the singular they more often than the gender-neutral he or other options in the context of being anaphors after indefinite pronouns like everybody and anybody. So, to break that down for you, people say that they don't use the word they, them, but imagine... Let's go for the non-binary person. So you're having trouble reminding yourself that you're talking about they, them, a person with they, them pronouns. So when you walk up to them, imagine you didn't know what they looked like. Imagine they are a blob, not like a blob on the floor, but a blob in the shape of a person. It could be a man or a woman, and you wouldn't even know. So the main goal here is to call them by they, them, because you're calling them by a person whose gender you don't actually know. And that's what people use they, them for all the time. For instance, when Clove got added to Valorant, people would call them they, them before they actually got into the game. And then once the non-binary thing was announced, everybody immediately called Clove a her. So it's pretty dumb. I'm not gonna lie. So, non-binary and genderqueer are umbrella terms for gender identities outside the male-female gender binary. Non-binary identities often fall under the transgender umbrella, since non-binary people typically identify with a gender that is different than sex assigned to them at birth. Although some non-binary people do not consider themselves transgender. So it's often identified as a separate third gender. Some non-binary people receive gender-affirming care to reduce the mental distress caused by gender dysphoria, such as gender-affirming surgery or hormone replacement therapy. Usually their goal is to look as gender-neutral as possible, which honestly I can respect. And now you may be wondering, no, this is just a Western thing made up. Well, I would like to introduce you to Two Spirits. Before we even came over here, an umbrella term was used by some indigenous North Americans to describe Native people who fulfill a traditional third gender or gender variant or other gender variant social role in their communities. Essentially, a third gender. There has always been more than two genders, and it seems that, it's a little bit awkward. There's even a pride flag for them, which I recommend you look up. It's Two Spirit Pride Flag. This whole non-binary gender thing has been out for a really long time. Non-binary gender, often included within the concept of third gender, has historical roots that extend well before the modern term was established. For instance, the public universal friend, who emerged in 1776, was a genderless evangelist who renounced their birth name and gendered pronouns, representing an early instance of non-binary gender expression in America. Now you may be thinking, oh, but Zeke, there's a bunch of people out there who are calling them stars, star south. Now, let me be real with you here. The amount of fear-mongering on those sorts of things is incredible, because that barely ever happens. You don't really have to deal with that. I've met one person who uses neopronouns, and I have met a lot of queer people, So I think it's pretty rare. And besides, neopronouns, coming up with stuff, those have been around for a long time. I actually did a report on pronouns back in the day, breaking out of character. And neopronouns can be hard, but they are very rare, and honestly, they're not hurting anybody. I would name myself Cool Self too. In 1789, that was the first official usage of neopronouns, where William H. Marshall used OU as a pronoun. Now, there's a lot more instances of people trying to create something similar to they with a gender-neutral pronoun, which is what they would usually use these created pronouns for. So that's a little bit of queer history for you, and I hope you know that biologically there's more than two genders. In this case, you mean sexes, and there is more than two genders with the social construct. And these have been around for a very long time. And now that you know a little bit more, what should I talk about next? I got a little bit of information for you. And if you need any proof, check out the singular they on Wikipedia. Check out non-binary gender on Wikipedia, two-spirit on Wikipedia. We got all sorts of information on there, and that is the cis straight white men. I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.